our blockchain panel. So please come forward. Okay, so this panel is going to look, we already have a presentation by Chris on the blockchain, and we already had a taste of the debate that we're going to be having. Not all opinions are the same, fortunately. And we'll be looking at blockchain, trying to see how the blockchain has proven to be some success as a cryptocurrency. Its realization has its potential in many other industries that has been advertised is still yet to be realized. And so among the problems, the performance and the regulation, there's also arguably some quite fundamental security problems on the short term, both of the blockchain technology itself, its ecosystem, its standards, but even of the technologies which are needed to make it work, because blockchain is just a stack, right? In many use cases. So this is kind of like the general input of the discussion. Let me pass on the moderation to Chris, that you have seen before.
Thank you.
Floor is yours.
Yes. So welcome to the panel discussion. The topic in short is we're going to talk about search for truly trustless blockchain, and I would also like to open the round with a quick introduction of the panel committee.
Thank you, Chris. My name is Jörn Erput. I'm active in the domain of blockchain and GDPR, where I'm a consultant. I'm teaching at the University of Geneva School of Diplomacy, Lichte Academy in Germany, and also doing a PhD on governance of and blockchain, which is of course a very hot topic now. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Philippe Thévaux. I work at SIGPA. SIGPA is doing security aims for banknotes around the world, so it's a trust in the physical world, but my role is to develop trust and confidence in the digital world, and of course blockchain is one component of building trust in the digital, but as we will see there are other components that we need to take into account also.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Wang. I'm a blockchain enthusiast and also cybersecurity advisor to a number of startups in the blockchain world, as well as cybersecurity. I've done artificial intelligence for the past 15 years, blockchain more recently, and also I'm teaching at the Institut de lutte contre la criminalité économique in Neuchâtel about cybercrime and risk management.
Hi, my name is Michael Kullein. I'm a lawyer and I work at the German Research Institute for Public Administration as a coordinator in the Department of Digitalization. And my focus is also GDPR, questions of blockchain, but also public sector use of blockchain communications, how we can introduce in the public administration. And also working with Chris on the privacy by blockchain design.
And thank you for the introduction. And then I actually don't want to talk too much myself, but really open up the panel discussion for the broader question: what are the technical, governance, and ecosystem and certification challenges to increase the actual, measurable, and perceived trustworthiness of blockchain?
Well, one striking thing which is where Rufus' approach and blockchain really come together is private key management, because blockchain is pretty secure, but your private key probably is not secure. So you need a secure device which you can trust, and this doesn't exist right now. So this is a very specific problem where the blockchain might be trustless, but your private key, you have to trust to somebody. And then, of course, blockchain is not failure-proof. We all know blockchain is software, and software has bugs, hopefully not, but maybe. So we need to have governance to fix those problems. There is blockchain governance. Often it's unstructured, sometimes it's structured, like EOS, but there are attempts. It's not always performing well. So we are coming back, even with blockchain, we are coming back to all those problems we already have in democracy. How can we govern a decentralized system? How can we have shared distributed governance? Every democracy has the same problem, and with blockchain we have the same problem, and with trustless AI we have the same problem as well. So we need to put governance on a technical basis, meaning that we need to have an infrastructure where we can have secure distributed governance, because blockchain is not trustless, it's distributed trust.
Thank you.
I think when we are talking about blockchain, this is looking just as a small part of the story. If we want to build trust, blockchain is very important, and I very often take the image of building an arch about this trust building. We have an arch, and blockchain is like the keystone of this arch. But there are other components to build this arch. Just a keystone is just a nice stone on the floor, which is not very useful. But when we put it at the right place together with other components, like a strong digital identity, like means to preserve privacy, confidentiality, like encryption, like physical to digital link. When we put all these things together, we can build really a trustless system which is building confidence into it. So we should never isolate the blockchain. But however, the blockchain is this keystone is not strong, the whole arch and thus the whole construction will fall down. So this is why this discussion is very useful, because we need to make sure that this blockchain is really strong and does not have backdoors, flaws, weaknesses, and this is into the right governance. And if we have time, I will be able later on to explain typically what Estonia has done using a blockchain which is born before the Bitcoin blockchain, which is, to my point of view, really solving the problem of a fully trustless solution.
Thank you. And I would like to, honestly, thank Philip. And I remember when he was presenting actually that part of the blockchain congress at Belexpo on the 21st of January, it was actually really insightful in terms of saying, okay, blockchain is only one pillar, but it's not the single pillar. And luckily, it's not the single pillar. And to add on to what Philip was just mentioning, is what is important is that blockchain was initiated by geeks, right? Was initiated by techies. And now people from the business are trying to use it without actually understanding it. And to refer to what Rufo was presenting, said, okay, it has a negative aspect. It has actually the dark web inside. It has the terrorists, the state-sponsored or whatever. And I also remember on the last month, on the 14th of March, at the Centre Suisse de la Presse, where I was actually at the panel with Jöran, and there was a lawyer, and thanks Leila, when she was talking about the data aspect, there was a lawyer who asked a question, say, okay, well, everything we talk about blockchain has a negative impression. And they said there's a lot of abuse, there's a lot of like darknet, and why should we actually trust blockchain? And I said, we're trying to use blockchain as a new mean of technology right now. Whether this technology fits all the markets, probably not. Whether blockchain is the solution to solve every single issues around the world, definitely not. It's only a mean. And I was actually answering the question to the lawyer, say, okay, don't just put the negative aspect. I truly know that, personally working in forensics and audits, it's true that whenever actually people are using a new technology, they will find the good part of it, and obviously they will find the actually negative part. And that's the arms race always about the new technology. You think about AI will solve all the solutions. Are you going to trust autonomous vehicle? yes, in a certain extent. Why do people actually bash on Tesla whenever Tesla has a new accident? They always think, oh, that's bad and we shouldn't be trusting it. Actually, it's not. It's really about finding whether there's a correspondence and the relation of what business or community is trying to achieve, and more rather just on the business side. I mean, Rufo was talking about certification. We're talking about governance. We're talking about the ecosystem. Are those three words, just those three words, related just to the blockchain or related to any kind of technology? And I will probably want to refer to one thing back 29 years ago. I was at the CICG during the first Internet Day with Tim Berners-Lee. At that time, Internet was just the startup, a start. And I remember Tim was mentioning, okay, well, at CERN, created the new World Wide Web with a consortium. I mean, at that time, they were talking about consortium already. People were just interesting to make the comparison between internet and the military. Obviously, it was done for the purpose of military at the beginning. Nobody thought that internet will make such a revolution that everybody will be using it at that time. And I remember, to answer the lawyer's question, it took roughly 2 years before the first, not amendment, but the first directive about what we are allowed to store on the internet, what we are allowed to transmit on the internet started to take place. I think it was back in November 1992. So it took 2 years. And referring again to what Leila was mentioning about the law, it takes roughly, 7 years until a legal legislation is being adopted. And from the legal side, the lawyers or the people from regulation, unfortunately or fortunately, are never going to be able to catch up with the exponential growth of technology. But to be able to adopt this governance, I mean, all the different stakeholders, not only techie people, but all the different stakeholders, the wider community, needs to work together in a consensus way, in an ecosystem such that they talk the same language. They can probably still trust, they somehow still need to trust the technical people whenever they initiate a new technology. That's how technology works. But always, I mean, having not necessarily just a foundation or an empowerment or an association to actually govern all the different stakeholders, to mitigate all the different issues, and to be able to talk to each other in a constructive way, rather than working in silos. For sure, blockchain was created by geeks, as I mentioned, and they had a different target or a different objective than compared to the business. So I mean, that's my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. Mr. Kulan?
Maybe I can connect to your idea to tell about the internet, and it took some time to develop, like that we put as a lawyer to the idea of the state of law. I think this goes back millennials, maybe at least in Europe, let's say 250 years, and still it's going on. So also the law was in a way made by geeks who have the idea, okay, we can somehow solve all the real world problems by putting some kind of abstract rules. So on the one side, also I have to maybe excuse for the lawyers, but we're trained to look at the negative parts and look at the critical parts, because usually that's the job we're doing. But also I think, like for me, when people come to me as a lawyer and say, okay, here's this letter from my insurance company, somehow they want me to pay something, they don't understand why. And then I check in it, look at the law, and I say, okay, that's why, and I explain. For me, the same thing is when I talk about blockchain, is I cannot prove it. You know, maybe these geeks who invented it, they think, okay, it's so open, everyone can check it, it's like accessible to everybody, but for the average person, it's not. So for me, the open source law doesn't bring me, because I need someone like Chris or like someone who knows about it to trust it again. So there I see like the development going very fast and getting a very somehow narrow and limited understanding of what trust actually means. But trust is not trust of experts, but also trust of the population.
Thank you. I think
I think this is very important, is how to explain these complex technologies and how that's to democratize these technologies. And typically one metaphor that I like to bring is in fact a blockchain was existing already more than 100 years ago, which is a newspaper. A newspaper is the oldest immutable distributed ledger that we could have imagined, because how can we secure an information today, typically the fact that we are here, all present here. We can take a picture and we publish it into a famous newspaper. In 10 years from now, we can prove to anybody that indeed we were there, because this picture cannot be counterfeited, cannot be changed, because the only way to counterfeit that is to recall all the copies of the New York Times or Financial Times or whatever large newspaper and substitute it by another version of the truth, which means a picture with somebody else maybe there. So it's impossible to change it. And blockchain, this is what it brings somehow. It's something where you cannot change easily the truth. For the newspaper, we could do it, but it's very, very difficult. And so we need to explain these things to the public, to the people, and then also to say, if I have the proof, okay, I can prove my good faith about the integrity of this data or whatever else, independently from the system. This means independently from the blockchain, and if I go back with this newspaper, independently from New York Times, if New York Times does not exist anymore, I don't care. I have the proof because I have the copies, my digital receipts.
But this is a really important point, because with the digitalization of society, we are getting rid of these old proofs, but we are relying on data stored somewhere. And how can we be sure that it's not manipulated? We need to distribute, we need to go back to the old blockchain, if you call it, like this, to the old distributed trusts in libraries, in whatever, and put it on a new level, and we call that blockchain. And it's not really technology that's exponential, it's society that's exponential. Because look at Facebook. Facebook is dumb technology, really dumb technology. But when did it start to change the world? When it was adopted by millions and billions of people. Blockchain didn't change the world for a long time. When did it have an impact? When the use of Bitcoin spread, the use of blockchain spread. So the adoption of technology in society, that is exponential. And that is difficult to cope with. Technology itself is slow, is not really fast evolving. It's society that is fast, adapting new trends, and we are having trouble in coping with that.
And probably also to jump on what, again, to refer to what Leila was asking, is that actually we're talking about society. And on a global scale, we're talking about what? Data. Actually, people are consumers of data. People are producing data in trillions, peta size of data. I mean, data is just exponential, for sure. And so we're producing useful data, but also we're producing useless data. And technology is just a means to store data.
If I have just one question to Philippe. Regards to the example of the newspaper, now, so the blockchain could be seen as a new newspaper which distributes a copy of the truth globally, and so just like newspapers, nobody can deny that I appeared on that newspaper on that given day and so on and so forth. But transferring this scenario on digital, you have a potential problem that this newspaper, it's a piece of code which could have bugs. It usually has a smart applications on it which could have bugs, and there's no acceptance, no certifications for these apps. In addition, it's not like a single version of a newspaper which is fixed, but it keeps changing, right? Because it's added in, it's a ledger. And any way to change this version of this newspaper requires a human with a client device to write to this proof and any way to read that information. I want to see if you had your picture there, it still requires a human with a client device to read if that information is there. And the client device we're using are very highly compromisable. And if, for example, they're compromised while I'm writing to the data, there's no way to undo. So it seems that moving to the digital world, the scenario of the printing, there's a lot of issues that don't seem much resolved. One further example is you mentioned the keystone. Now, so blockchain has been a keystone. Well, in an arch, a keystone is just one of the stones. So every other stone is as important. Everything will fall down. And so it's keystone just because it has a different shape. And you can have arch in different ways. So in order for the arch to stay, all of the stones need to be of the same strength. It's the weakest stone. So a blockchain architecture is one piece of a stack. So
I think I want to elaborate a little bit about my newspaper metaphor and why I used it. If you take the blockchain that Estonia is basing all its digital society in, which is called the KSI blockchain of Galtan, which is born in 2008, months before Bitcoin. Okay? What does it mean? If I would take with my phone here now a picture and I would secure it via this blockchain, I would receive in the next second the proof of the integrity of this picture and the timestamp that it has been done now. And I have that, I have the picture on my phone, I have the proof on my phone, on my device. My picture never left this phone, okay? And I will be able to prove my good faith that this picture did exist with the proof that I received 1 second later. Any time in the future, even if this KSI blockchain does not exist anymore. Why? Because all these hashes of my picture plus all the documents which are secure at the same second around the world are concatenated in one hash, which is then put in this KSI blockchain and concatenated in with all the next ones for the next seconds. And once a month, this top hash is published in the Financial Times. Okay? This means that, and I can go back with an Excel sheet, going up this ladder of hashes, this hash chain, from my document through these proofs to what is published into the newspaper. This means that I don't care, I don't need to care about the fact that there is a flaw in the system, that there is a bug into it, because it's impossible to create a false positive. This means that if I test my proof now, it will be positive. And if anything goes wrong, it will be immediately, all the proofs will get negative, will get red right away. Okay? And again, this is the trust by design, because it cannot be any bug into these things. And if the system is derailing later on, that's fine. But at this time, my proof is indisputable.
Unfortunately, it is not. Because we have seen hashing algorithm being broken, even being broken by design. And of course, paper is not immutable either. We have seen that acid paper has been used that is just evading after a certain time, dissolving after a certain time, and if you don't copy it, it's gone. And if you copy it, it's just a copy. So any system is not secure, and we have to live with it.
But if the SHA-256 is not secure, you can forget about all the blockchains. That's an assumption.
Chris.
Yes, so I'm told that we are out of time. I thank you very much for your comments and opinions and very valuable feedback on the question. And I would like to give the mic, the virtual mic, back to Rufo and introduce the
Thanks,
next
Chris,
one.
for always making me appear the bad guy who's really should. Okay. Actually, we should have Christian do it sometimes. All right. Thanks. Thank you.